Alright guys, we're back with the AR-15, doing some load development, and we're trying to get a hot 75 grain round loaded up for it and shooting accurately. If you guys don't know that I have this is my Palmetto State Armory AR-15. I bought it as a complete rifle. It used to have an 18-inch barrel on it, but then I swapped it over to this Midway USA 24-inch 1-to-8 twist barrel, and it's got a rifle length gas system. It's fully free floated. It's got an A2 rifle stock. It's got a Davidson Defense trigger in it. I think it's like a 3-pound trigger. We'll touch more on that in a minute. But I painted it myself. This is just spray paint. It has an SWFA fixed 20 power on top of it right now. I often switch it around. This mount has built-in 20 MOA. So I've got 20 MOA, lots of adjustability in the scope, 24-inch barrel. This thing's ready for long range, and if you couldn't have guessed, this thing is an absolute pig. It is one of my heaviest rifles, even though it's an AR-15. So let's get into the load development with it, and then let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, so if you guys do remember this rifle, when I first put the barrel on it, I was having chambering issues where the brass was getting stuck in the chamber, and I'd have to like mortar the rifle to get the brass out, and it wasn't firing, failure fires, a bunch of issues. So what it was is I originally was using my Lee 223 die. It's a standard 223 die, and then I ended up getting a RCBS small base 223 die, and that relieved all my issues. It's just got a tight chamber in this thing. The headspace is set really short, like close to the minimum of SAMI specs. I'm sure I really have to crush that shoulder back to get it to work in this rifle. Obviously, after it's been fired in it, I'm not pushing the shoulder back a crazy amount, but from my previous AR-15 to get it to work into this, I have to push the shoulder back a ways, as well as really size that base of the base of the brass down. If you're not following me there, this is the thickest part of the brass. This die really squeezes right here towards the bottom of the case, and helps resize it in that manner, and that helps it chamber into the rifle better. So I got that all figured out. The rifle has been running awesome for me through all of my load development to this point. Now before we get into the groups, I've got a Davidson Defense like 3-pound trigger in this thing. Single stage, they're supposed to be really sweet, really fast, like competition triggers. They're $100. So I ended up getting one for this, and the trigger feel is nice. However, this thing goes binary on me. There are 2 Allen set screws that go from, it's a 1-piece trigger that drops in, and it pushes from the body of the 1-piece trigger into the bottom of the AR, and it puts tension on these trigger pins. Well, if those things aren't tight against there, for some reason the sear doesn't work correctly, and this thing will go binary on you. So if you want a $100 binary trigger, there's your Davidson Defense. There's your option right there. However, if you're trying to shoot groups, what I mean by going binary, when I pull the trigger it goes off, and when I let go, when the trigger normally clicks and resets, it will go off again. So it goes bang, bang. So I'm sitting there trying to shoot precise groups, so I have to aim when I pull the trigger, make sure I hold the trigger back, and then aim when I release the trigger, which is really strange. And it doesn't work well for what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to be talking with Davidson Defense, and I'll most likely be getting this one swapped out. Alright, all that information aside, what are we trying to do for load development here? Like I say, this AR-15 set up for long range shooting. I really want to get a good high ballistic bullet moving fast out of this 24-inch barrel. If I'm going to have the extra barrel length and weight, I want the benefit of speed. That's what I'm going for here. Now, I do want to magazine feed, so I'm going to go with a 75 grain bullet just because that's what fits in magazines, and it's kind of the staple of the AR-15 long-range shooting world. The military has a sniper round, and it is called the MK262 Mod1. And what it is, it's a Sierra 77 grain bullet with a cannelure, and then they load it up over a spherical powder in 5.56 brass. They load it hot. This stuff rips, and if you didn't know, this is a piece of MK262 Mod1. So this is Black Hills ammunition. You can just go buy this off the shelves. It is not cheap. So I bought some to throw over a chronograph and see what the benchmark was for what the military was using, and then for me to try and get close to those velocities. These things are running basically at max of what your AR-15 is really designed for. So you're going to have to be careful with the powders that you choose. That's why I've tried out multiple powders here, as well as some powders you're going to have to be careful of the size of the powder and how much compression you're going to get. Now, I'm not shooting 77 grain Match Kings. I'm not exactly going for a clone load here. I'm just trying to get the velocity with a very similar bullet. Now, Eagle Eye Shooting is another YouTube channel. He's into long range shooting. He just got out to Arizona. He's got a great big desert to play in just like I do, and he's got a great channel. He's creeping up on 1,000 subscribers. Link in the description below. Please go follow Eagle Eye Shooting. He's the one who sent me this barrel to play with. He's got one in his AR, so we can kind of go back and forth and go over notes with reloading. So he also sent me some bullets that shoot well on his, and these are Everglades ammunition. These are 75 grain bullets. They're really similar to the Hornady 75 grains, and so that's essentially what it is. It's very similar to the Hornady 75 grain, which isn't terribly far off of the Sierra 77 grain. So we're splitting hairs here a little bit. The hollow points on these bullets aren't closed up quite like the Sierras are. These do not have a cantilure. I've never crimped. I don't really care to have a crimp. I've never had issues without a crimp. I run like 3 or 4 thousandths neck tension on my brass, so I've got plenty of neck tension on bullets when I'm shooting things with my AR-15. So 75 grains, decent ballistic coefficient. I think it's high 300s is what those have. So I'm just trying to get these up to speed and get them to shoot well, and then we're going to stretch them out. Now, I have been struggling a bit to get a good group put together with this AR-15. So I got some of this MK262 and I shot it at 100 yards, and these 3 shots measured into 0.64 inches. Up here my trigger went binary and things didn't go well, but I did get chronograph data. So this chronograph data is for all 6 shots. It came out across the chronograph going 2,890 feet per second with a standard deviation of 15.3. There's our benchmark, and I would like to get accuracy less than an inch, really. I know that AR-15s aren't always the most accurate systems. I know that some shoot extremely well. I'm just trying to get mine to shoot pretty well. So I just need to get it under an inch, 0.64. I'd be really happy with another 0.64 inch group with my own loads. So I guess we'll just start off with Varget. This is Varget powder, again, 75 grain bullet. So I chose 3 powder charges, and then I also chose 3 different types of powder. So I shot 9 groups here with different powders trying to come up with this load development. We started out with 22.7 grains of Varget. Velocity was 2628. 7.1 feet per second standard deviation, and this number right here is 0.60. I use an app on my phone called Sub MOA, where like you take a picture of the group and then you tell it where all the bullet holes are, and it will measure it on there. You give it a point of reference, so I set a ruler in the picture, tell it that that's an inch, and then it can tell how far away the bullet holes are. So it is 0.60 MOA, not necessarily inches. So 0.60 MOA, and we're more than 200 feet per second off our target here. We're like 250 feet per second slower. So we bumped up the charge to 23.2 grains. Now we're closing in on 2,700 feet a second. We're still 200 feet per second behind here. 2683, standard deviation of 12.3, which isn't terrible. 0.97, again, I'd be just fine with that if I can get my hand loads fast enough and maintaining accuracy like this. And all the way down at the bottom down here, it shot right on the edge of the target. Luckily it even hit the target. But we're up to 2755 with 23.7 grains. This time it broke out of an MOA, 1.14 MOA. The problem here is with 24 grains of Varget, I'm using 556 brass. And so 556 brass has thicker walls than like standard 223 does. So it constricts case capacity. It increases pressure, which can boost velocity, but you lose case capacity for how much powder you could stuff in it before you start getting a compressed charge. So really at 24 grains, I'm starting to get the Rice Krispie sound when I seat my bullets. And I don't know how much benefit there is to compressing more powder on top of it once it's already a full case. So I think Varget is just a little bit too bulky for our purposes here. if I could get this up to like 24.5, 24.6 grains, somewhere in there, I might be able to get up to the velocities I need. But just with how much room it's taken up in the case, I don't think this is the powder that is going to work for us in this case. So Varget is out. It missed the goal here, 27.55 by more than 120, 130 feet a second, which is a lot to make up in the next half grain or so. Now pressure is a little bit hard to read here because this brass is from some of that 5.56 stuff. So when the factory 5.56 is shot, it's leaving like ejector smears and stuff. This is hot stuff. This is really cooking when it comes out. So you get pressure signs from the first firing, so it's hard to keep track of pressure from that point on. You're really just kind of left with reading your primer. And these primers, I still have round corners, nothing too scary at all. I feel totally fine with the pressures I was running here. I just don't think that I would be able to get up to the velocity I'm looking for. So the next powder we tried was H4895. It's a little bit finer cut than Varget is, so we can fit more grains of powder into the case. And I don't mean granules of powder, I mean like the weight of the powder. You can fit more weight of this powder inside your case. So these groups are a little bit jumbled up. I had an issue right here. You can see I marked it binary, which just means that when I pulled the trigger and I released it, it went off again, which caused issues. So the first group, 22.2 grains, we got 26.24 feet per second, and the group size is 1.14 MOA. Moving on, 22.7, so we're jumping up in half grain increments here. We picked up 80 feet a second, and our standard deviation was 4.6. That's very impressive. So we got these three that grouped pretty well down here. This one was a binary trigger pull, so I actually just took that out of the group size, and these three measured 0.54 MOA. Not a terrible showing here. Low standard deviations, good grouping, minus the stupid binary thing, but that's my rifle's fault, not really me pulling the shot or anything. Up another half grain, we're up to 2,800 feet per second. Standard deviation of 11.4, really close to that 10 feet per second standard deviation everybody seems to be after. These four did not group particularly well, and it all came into 1.64 MOA, which is actually pretty hideous, and I'm not happy at all about that. However, checking the brass here, the primer pockets are still around. It looks like we've got a long way to go with how much we could put in there. And we did have a lot of case capacity left with the H4895. This is my first time trying H4895 in 223 at all, let alone with a heavy bullet. Typically you want the slower powders like Varget to go with heavy bullets, but with what we're trying to do here, I need the smaller, finer, faster powders, and I got to try and get those figured out to push these heavier bullets at a good speed. So H4895 coming through with a pretty good showing here. I'm going to continue working with H4895. All right, and finally we've got H322, which I've had a little more experience with. I've experimented with this in the past. Haven't quite found like a super awesome high velocity, well grouping round yet, but the standard deviations typically are pretty good, and then the grouping is pretty good. So I think if we worked with it a little bit, we could get this thing to shoot lights out. So H322 is known in the bench rest world, actually. I think they use it, I might be mistaken here, like 6BR, like small fast cartridges that are just shooting little tiny groups with, and this is a go-to powder for them, which is good for what we're trying to do. We want accuracy. First one, 21 grains. We get 26.25 feet per second. Group size is 0.94 MOA, so under an MOA. 21.5 grains. We jump up to almost 2,700 feet a second, so we picked up about 75 feet per second there. And then we've got these four coming in at 0.83 MOA, which is pretty awesome. 22 grains, we get all the way up to 2776 feet per second. We picked up like 85 feet a second from just in that half grain, and 11 feet per second standard deviation, which is awesome. I wasn't able to get a good measurement here because it went binary on me, so it ruined that group, unfortunately. I'm going to continue working with H322. Now let's take a look at the Sierra load data for H4895 and H322 and see how much more we can go with this. Now for some strange reason, the load data I have here is just one of these complete reloading manual for 223. These are really valuable. I highly suggest picking one up. They're cheaper than a reloading manual, and you get like 9 different brands of reloading manuals in here. So Sierra has bolt action reloading data as well as AR-15 reloading data, which is really awesome. It's great for them to do that. What I think is really strange here is in the AR-15, they have 77 grain load data listed, but in the bolt action, they only have a 69 grain hollow point boat tail match king, and then it jumps up to the 80 grain. So I don't know what happened there, why they skipped over the 77. No reason you couldn't shoot a 77 in a bolt action. So for H322 in the AR-15, the listed max is 21.8. Well, I just shot 22 grains and with 0 pressure signs. It looks fine. In the bolt action, with a heavier bullet, that will increase pressure. With H322, they go to 23.6 grains. That's a grain and a half higher. On those groups I just showed you, in a half grain, I picked up 80 feet a second. So I should be, so using reason here, a heavier bullet increases pressure, 23.6 grain max. If you lighten this bullet, that max should go up. So I'm going to stick with this as a max. I'm actually just going to work up until I hit my target velocity. I'm not necessarily trying to go above the max listed here. I just want to get my target velocity. So I should be able to go above 22 grains from what they're saying here. In their 24-inch barrel, they have 2,900 feet a second listed here with quite a few different powders in a bolt action rifle. So I don't see why I couldn't get it done with my AR-15. Obviously the gas system eats up a little bit of velocity. So I think with the right powder and enough of it, we could be able to get up to that target velocity and keep up with that Black Hills ammo. So I'm going to push more with the H322. With the H4895, this one's saying we can go up to 24.5 grains. And the max that we shot on our groups was 23.2. So we've got quite a bit of room to go up with that. And again, with those half grain jumps, we were seeing 50 to 70 feet per second jumps as well. So we got a lot more room listed here that we can keep moving up, and we should be able to pick up quite a bit more velocity as we go. So I'm going to be working with H322, H4895. I've got the 5.56 brass from that Black Hills ammo. I'm using Federal Gold Medal Match AR primers. These powders, 75 grain Everglades bullets. My 24-inch 1-to-8 twist barrel with a rifle length gas system. I'm excited, guys. We should be able to get out and shoot really far, and that's what this is all about. I'm going to be putting my Grendel, Valkyrie, and 223 head-to-head, and we're going to see how they compare at long range. So I got to get a good round shooting for my AR-15 here. It's the underdog here, so I'm going to do what I can and try and get that thing cranked up. So until the next video, guys, I greatly appreciate you sticking with me this long. I know it's a lot of talking, a lot of in-depth detail and whatnot, but I really enjoy this. It's a whole lot of fun. I thank everybody for subscribing along. Please check out Eagle Eye Shooting. Definitely worth checking out. He's got a lot of great stuff going on over there. Thank you, Kenny. I appreciate it, man. And we'll see you guys in the next video.